Hi everyone, I wanted to take a look at a small passage, a short passage by Dudley Knowles, Philosophy of Right. You have that as a PDF in the file section. Chapter 4, Abstract Right 1, Persons and Their Rights. I want to focus on the concept of personality, because I think that's really important to understand that. And I think Knowles has quite a nice way to make that understandable. Oh, I think I lost the passage now. Okay, I have to go back for a moment. So why is this concept of personality so important? Well, first of all, because it defines the modernity of Hegel's social philosophy. Personality is a concept that belongs to the modern era. And secondly, because it's the presupposition of the entire passage on the abstract right. And it's the culmination at the same time, that's my third point, it's the culmination of the discussion on the free will. Now, Dudley Knowles has a charmingly easy way to introduce this concept. It's much more difficult to read that in the German version and to decode Hegel's language. So let's take a look at Dudley Knowles here. What am I? We've now moved on to asking our characterization of the free will. So we have now understood that the free will is a very important concept, and that it's the presupposition of social philosophy, and that we need to inquire into the nature of the ego, the human self-consciousness, in order to understand the basic principles of social philosophy. The first immediate answer is I am me. I am just whatever I am. It's abstract. It says nothing about me or my world, except that I confront myself as pure personality. That's paragraph 35. And yet fully determinate. I am whatever I am, with all of these bodily characteristics and age and ideas, etc., etc. So that's his starting point in the Cartesian ego, totally pure self-reference. Now, in the Dudley Knowles presentation, it's Hegel who draws a couple of conclusions here. First of all, this self that is immediately disclosed is infinite, universal, and free. Now, in what sense is the self universal? Because as soon as I detach myself from any content of consciousness, I become this pure abstract I, and that is the same abstract I that is the result of this detachment in any other subject. So in this sense, the I that I reach is truly universal, because everyone is in that sense a person. All concrete limitation and validity are negated and invalidated. In so doing, I abstract from any distinctive feature of myself that might distinguish me from other selves. I discover my universality. I am what I am, but so are you. And we are both different from each other. I differ from you, and you differ from me. Everyone differs from anyone else. So that's the first thing. I discovered this universality that is connected to the abstract nature of the I. Secondly, this capacity for detachment, as we have seen, is an element of the free will. It's one of the moments of the free will, this capacity to withdraw from any content that I will, to withdraw within the abstractness of the free will, and then through that, having a new content of the will again. Thirdly, I disclose the infinite in the sense that the self thus revealed is not limited by the desires and inclinations of the natural self from which it has abstracted. So it's not determined by its own desires and inclinations. So it has no content whatsoever. And that is a point in terminology. It's the self as a person. So there is historic reason for Hegel to use the word person for that. Now, Dudley Knowles says person is evidently functioning here as a term of art. So it's artificial in the sense it's just a choice of words. But it's an important concept. To say that someone is a person says nothing about her beliefs or desires, but it does impute a formal character, which is important but easily overlooked. Now, this is very interesting. Dudley Knowles refers to two elements, one of which is the exclusive individuality. That's the main definition of personality, ausschließende Einzelheit. At the same time, if personality is the only thing that would be characteristic of the subject in social philosophy, we would have something like atomare Einzelheit, atomic individuality. So this abstractness would spill over into the entirety of the social sphere, and we would think of individuals as being absolutely separated from everything else. Now, the ausschließende Einzelheit is a characteristic of personality, but if you take personality as the only and absolute term for human subjectivity in the social sphere, then it becomes this atomic individuality, which Hegel, by the way, in the phenomenology, associates with the Roman culture. Now, this is to say that the self, as we first encounter it, is a distinct individual, discrete. That means determined by its negation of everything else, separated from them, having a particular determination, bounded from other selves and from the external world which they inhabit. So there is atomicity, this abstract withdrawal of the individual into itself, but this is something that we share with all other individuals. So there is a reason to speak about person as exclusive individuality, but we should not make that into an absolute characteristic of social subjectivity. So the first question, what am I, is answered by I am me, not you nor it. I can apply to myself the formal concept of a person. I am a person. Now, the reason that this is so important, Dudley Knowles stated, I might, and in Antiquity I did, describe myself with some kind of social status. For instance, the social status of a slave, or by identifying myself with some social group, I identify myself as being of this family or of this clan or of this nation. I'm a Scottish Highlander, or I'm a Dutch person. Now, when I identify myself with this social status as such, I become completely determined by the society or the social group that I live in, either by assuming that identity or by having been subjected to this identity from the outside. And it's very important that liberty, true liberty, begins with this capacity to distinguish myself from the social identity that someone else has given me. So it looks a bit paradoxical, but the true realization of liberty is not just to identify a subject with his social role or the social identity that is given to him, but to distinguish himself, to understand that we as persons are in fact able to totally disengage ourselves from this social identity, and that then we need to show how on the basis of this total disengagement there is still something like a social identity for us. I think in general, I would add that to Dudley Knowles' analysis, what we will see is that at first we understand I'm me, I'm not you, I'm not it, is this infinite capacity of disengagement. But that is the disengagement, the abstract withdrawal into oneself, that is being executed by a subject that already has some kind of social identity. So it's society in a way that orders me, that morally imposes upon me exactly this, the capacity to withdraw myself from this social identification. A social organization, a society that does not allow me, or what's the term that gives me the capacity to withdraw myself from the social identifications that I live in, is exactly not a free society. So society, the social structures that I live in, begin with the paradoxical capacity to not be determined by them. Because all of my social determination, which of course are already in place, they are already functioning, I should be able to adopt and assume freely, which is only possible if I have the capacity to withdraw from them, to not be determined by them in the way a natural object is determined by natural laws. Dudley Knowles acknowledges that Hegel finds this concept of personality within Christianity, and especially within Protestantism, and that is because in that form of religion, the personality is seen as having this unique relationship with God, which involves the total distinction, the disengagement from that person in its relationship to God from all other determinations, because this is the basic, invisible, not social relationship that defines my being. So in that sense, it's negative toward all the social determinations that I already have. Now, all of this is not just a matter of the structure of self-consciousness. It's not just an abstract idea, or what Dudley Knowles calls it here. The concept of a person is not ethically inert. It has an ethical dynamics built into it. And that is expressed in the commandment of right, be a person and respect others as persons. So the discovery of my personality involves also the imperative to recognize others as persons, not just recognizing others who have the same social interests or have a particular social relationship to me, or are equal to me in motivations or whatever, but to recognize them in their capacity to withdraw and disengage from any such social determinations. He says it quite beautifully and simply here, but there is a distinctive moral vocabulary that they employ, these persons, when they act as persons and accord others the respect that their personhood is due. They use the language of rights, and that is the way that Dudley Knowles introduces here the concept of rights. It's part of the moral language of a person as such, in its recognition of others as persons, in its acceptance of the fact that as a person I am distinct from all of the social determinations that I find myself in from my childhood on. Okay, that's just an addition to what we have already discussed. I will also continue to read Hegel's text, some more in detail, but this is a very important concept, the concept of personality, and it's quite beautifully described in the book by Dudley Knowles that I would strongly advise you to read, along with the text of the philosophy of right as a sort of ongoing commentary on the text. I will try to do the same, or I am already doing something similar by providing you with the commentary on the text, but I'm focused more on the actual movement of Hegel's thought, whereas Dudley Knowles manages to give us insight into the basic outline and the fundamental concepts that Hegel is using here. So I strongly advise you again to read this text. Okay, that's it about the concept of personality from the commentary by Dudley Knowles.